You are tuning in to Access Live, a show about raising awareness, what's going on in the community, and to address the issues that impact youth and their families that have serious emotional and behavioral challenges. We are located at the Brookins Building at 1776 East Washington in Urbana, Illinois, and at the downtown location at 202 West Park Street.
Well, good afternoon, Champaign-Urbana. You have tuned into Access Live, a community education and engagement arm of the Access Initiative. I'm your host, Imani Bazzell, and as you know, we take a day out every week to talk about how our folks are doing, what's having an impact on us, how are we having an impact on the world, and how do we get closer to the mental health and healing that will allow us to live the lives we've always wanted. I've been seeing your gardens out there. You know I'm on you every week. I'm on myself every week. I got a lot to do myself, so if you drive down Paula Drive and see I don't yet have it all together, just pray for me. So if you're growing vegetables or flowers or just trying to get a patch of dirt turned into grass, good for you. We've had some great rain and some great sunshine, and for many of us, summer is the season for us because we were originally what I call solar babies. So I've got a wonderful solar baby in me with in the studio this afternoon. We've got Dr. Amira Davis, whose graduate work was in educational policy studies, but many of us know her as Mama Amira. We know her as a person with decades under her belt of cultural arts work in terms of production and performance. Most everyone listening knows that we lost an elder in Dr. Maya Angelou last week, and many people have mourned her passing. She certainly was a great woman who had a great impact on us before the rest of the world knew who she was. Most of us grew up with her. The world, I think, may have known her, Amira, if you think, before the mass United States knew her, of course, because many people came to know her by giving the poem at President Clinton's inauguration. Of course, we knew her our whole lives, and she'd been a global traveler and someone committed to international peace and freedom for decades. So I sent Dr. Amira a note saying I was thinking about maybe featuring some of her poetry. This was last week that I said maybe for this week. And then she hollered back at me and reminded me we had talked about doing a show on the arts and mental health. And so, you know, both of our brains got to churning, and it's become a 3-part series. So welcome to part 1 of our 3-part series on the arts and mental health in the context of the African American community. So welcome, Dr. Davis.
Thanks for having me here, Imani.
Wonderful. Yeah. So many people know that you raise your children in an intensely artistic environment, that you have been a contributor in Chicago and certainly in our community. How many years now?
17.
That's unbelievable. That's right, because your baby and my baby were just babies.
Yes, exactly.
Are they exactly the same age? Mine's 17.
She's a few months older than Naila.
Yes, Naila. Yeah, but Naila graduated early.
Yes, she did.
She's something else.
Yes, thank the Lord. My baby, you know, she doubled up on classes so that she could graduate.
Well, she's just so smart. And, you know, is a child after your own heart. She just oozes creativity.
Yes.
And she is her own person. She's been her own person since I've known her.
She's definitely that. She's a very strong-willed, determined young lady.
Yeah.
And she set her sights on New York. And so it was New York or bust. Next, it come the fall. And so that's what she was determined to do, to pursue her passion in photography.
Okay. Oh, and that is wonderful. Photography, you know, in my other life, I think I was at least a wannabe photographer. It's not something I've given up on, but it's a beautiful art.
Yes.
What we're here to talk about. Now, you are a much braver mommy than me. You know, my aunt and I was talking about New York or bust too. And I couldn't let her go.
Well,
but she and Naila are different.
You missed the part where I said strong-willed and determined.
Yeah. She twisted your arm to make it happen.
Well, it's not twisted my arm. It's not like, you know, something that I'm just excited about.
Okay.
It's that she's convinced me that this is her path. And
I love it.
That, you know, no amount of mothering and holding on and coddling is going to make her change her mind from that.
And I see that happening for her. You know, I may have undue influence on my Amina, but I couldn't, she's so sweet, you know, and in many ways so innocent. And I was just afraid New York would gobble her up, 'cause she's tender-hearted.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of space, I think, in our community, certainly in our nation, for the tender-hearted.
Well, I think the same about Naila. I think that she's very driven.
Yeah.
But I do think that she's, you know, she's 17.
Yeah,
she won't be 18 until August, and New York is tough. However, the Parsons New School of Design is, you know, a very good school.
Absolutely.
The new it's a part of the new school.
That's what I was interested in too.
And you know, the social justice work they do there.
Excellent.
So, you know, and then I had to think, my nephew went away. He's from California, and he's a musician. He was he got a scholarship to Berklee School of Music in Boston.
They're excellent, yes.
And he left his father, my brother, and his mother, and went to Boston, and he, at 17, and he did just fine. He just graduated from there last month. And so I have to know or feel that I did a good job of raising Naila.
You have.
It's a long way to get to if she breaks a nail and wants mommy. But, you know, I again, you know, we had to roll out on faith.
No, listen, bless your heart. And again, we have people in New York. When she goes, we let her go to New York for spring break. She went to, you know, she's got an aunt who lives in Harlem. She hung out, you know. She's been there 4, 5, 6 times. I just didn't feel safe. So, you know, hats off, babe. Really, I think that's great. I think I told you that she's going to be doing a gap year this year. So, you know, we're putting the plan together, and there will be travel and study connected with that travel. But, you know, another year, she'll be just, you know, that much more mature and ready to make these kinds of huge decisions.
Oh, sure.
So, yeah. You know, I'm the one who pooped out on that, and I still got to say I'm not sorry. So, anyway, why don't you talk to our audience about why we've been talking about the importance of the arts when we think about the mental health and healing of our community?
Well, for one, I was recently working on a project and doing some research for Ruby Mendenhall, a sociologist here who's going back in the community, Inglewood community in Chicago, to follow up on some research she had been doing. One of my main things when she invited me to participate in the program was an intervention, some type of intervention with the women who are living in these high violent areas, high poverty, and I know for myself, coming out of Chicago as a mother, single mother raising children who lived in a really violent neighborhood and actually experienced my share of violence there, that the arts is what saved me and my family, and being a part of a larger cultural community. So I was crafting the Shaker Ray when I was there. I was participating.
I got one of those Shaker Rays, and it's beautiful.
And I'm glad you do. And I was part of the dance community and doing performances as an art and education provider. And just, the fact that I lived on the corner of 67th and Stony Island, and I could hear gunshots.
Okay.
And I heard and knew children dying, and held the hand of a young boy who had just been beaten senseless in the streets. It, going home and drumming or crafting the instrument was always a way for me to get that energy off
Just
of
sort of
me.
self-therapy.
It was therapy for me. And so when I thought about what could happen with these women there, I was thinking, and last semester it was a very stressful teaching semester for me, and as soon as I submitted the final grades, I started beating. I just sat there like, it was just the center of my universe at that particular moment. And so I thought about how this could help those women alleviate stress, reconnect them to the culture, because there's that cultural lesson in it. Where does this instrument come from?
Yes.
Why do they play this instrument? And also some entrepreneurship, because not only do I get to craft this really nice instrument, and if I decide to wood burn and paint, decorate it, I also get to sell it and make some money and pay a bill.
Yeah.
And so Ruby started thinking that was an intervention she wanted to have with the women. And so I was doing research and finding literature on arts therapy and the therapeutic properties of our cultural art forms. I had already come across literature about drumming and rhythmic instruments being a way for children to learn empathy, to sit around and drum together, because when we drum, we're not all drumming on the same beat. It's polyrhythm, so we have to listen intently to one another, and we have to pay attention to that. Or with some percussion instruments added in, we're listening to those things. And so
Excuse me a second. Don't I remember you even saying something about the impact drumming can actually have on the brain circuitry?
Well, it can lower cortisol levels,
yeah.
and so and that's something I was thinking about.
Cortisol is fight or flight.
Yes.
Yes.
And that was something I was thinking about in terms of these women. We would hope that children don't have that high cortisol level, but unfortunately, coming from certain communities, they do. But these studies weren't done necessarily with children in those types of high-intensity environments who are suffering from PTSD. They were just looking at children in general and wanting to instill this sense of empathy. But I did a program with some boys at the Boys and Girls Club. I called them the Reading Rhythm Warriors. And I would take the drums and percussion instruments and set them in a circle, and we would be in a circle around them. The kids would really want to get to the drums. No, you have to read first. But the readings that I constructed for them were things that were of interest to them, had impact and importance to their lives. Like one of the readings was a blog post about Kewan Carrington. But after they read, they were allowed to drum. And so after the first time they did it, I kind of gave them, it was loosely structured, gave them a little rhythm so they weren't just beating.
Yeah, right.
And then, they played along together, and at the end, I let them take it up and kind of wild out. And then I asked them, how do you feel? One boy said, I feel alive.
Yes.
I feel free.
And relief, right?
Yeah, those kinds of comments were coming from them. And so we know that drumming has that impact. Unfortunately, what's happened is, and I just wrote a book chapter about a group of drummers in Chicago, the Chicago Sun Drummers, and they were able to reclaim drum culture for us. The drum was taken away during slavery, not just because of the Protestant religion,
Sure.
but because whites feared that it communicated
And
revolt.
they were right.
Yes, it could be used for that.
Can you say something about the talking drum?
Well, the drums generally, they communicate between human beings. They communicate with the spirit world. They communicate with the dancer. They're part of those life cycle events, births, deaths, weddings, and so they played a vital role in our community. They were healing as well. But when we were brought here, Christianity and slavery disrupted that. And, some of the early laws on the books prohibited blacks from being able to own or play drums, and penalized any slave master who allowed them to be played. And the only place they were kept alive in the United States was in New Orleans, Congo Square, where on Sundays Africans were allowed to be free to, they could market, and I'd suggest that they were bartering for freedom there too. Madame Marie Laveau was one of those who came into the marketplace with the dance, the drums, and she did her healing work there. So, but eventually, after the United States took over that piece of land in the
Louisiana Purchase,
early 19th century, drums were outlawed there as well.
Now, so one thing we can guess then is that one of the things we can always count on an oppressor to do is anything they outlaw or ban clearly is the very thing that we need.
Exactly, and you're right about that. So sometimes I feel that we've in the contemporary moment have rendered these things as primitive, like our oppressor has done.
Yes.
But in a conversation I was having on Facebook with one of my sister friends, she reminded me that the root of primitive is prime, or the foundation,
yes,
the
central
source.
core.
Yes, it's not ancillary to, but it's the fundamental part of it, and so we need to return to that. Amilcar Cabral, in his thesis on liberation and culture, said that we need to return to the source. And after we saw 12 Years a Slave, and I was talking about what the stories of Eliza and Patsy told us was about the trauma that had happened to black women, and maybe poetry and telling our stories, or dance, or feeling the rhythm, all of those things could reconnect us to that culture that had been taken away from us, and could act as therapy for us. So and that's been the path I've pretty much been on. But week before last, I was at a conference here, Qualitative Inquiry, and I presented my paper on this group, the Chicago Sun Drummer.
Can you help people? Can you do a little bit of teaching for 30 seconds? Distinguish qualitative from quantitative, so folks know what that means?
Well, qualitative, you do more in-depth and you gather stories. Quantitative is numbers and statistics.
Yeah. So we're talking about research, that there's two primary ways to do
doing research.
Yes.
And this was ethnography, where I went and interviewed these men who had maintained this culture. My own godfather, Chief James Bay Hawthorne, who was out of Brooklyn, New York, was a premier drummer well before the drum culture really got started here again, and he worked with Catherine Dunham. But his
East St. Louis,
in New York.
Right, now we think of people make the East St. Louis connection.
But
do we need to take a break or a phone call? A break. He says a break, everybody. Okay. We let it get to us. So, okay, y'all hold on, because this is going to be real good. We'll be right back.
Access Live can be heard every Wednesday afternoon from 2 to 3 p.m. on WBCP 1580 AM in Champaign-Urbana. You can learn more about the Access Initiative by visiting their website at www.access-initiative2.org.
And we're back. We were just in here expressing our artful selves and lost track of time. So we are back in the studio with me, your host, Imani Bazzell. We have Dr. Amira Davis, who is a veteran of the cultural arts movement as a performer and cultural material arts designer and maker. She has raised her children in that tradition and worked for many years in Chicago in the Black cultural arts movement, and for the past 17 years has been with us here in Champaign-Urbana, dragging us, kicking and screaming. So, we are talking about the cultural arts and the mental health and healing of the African American community. So on the one hand, Mama Amira, it's about helping us remember, right?
Yes.
Remember our African roots. Remember what kept us sane, right? What
Yes.
kept us whole. So the arts and cultural expression, they're who we are in so many ways. They're the foundation of African American culture. But then at the same time, many structural things happened, as you talked about before the break, to tear us away from those cultural roots and traditions that kept us sane, that kept us mentally healthy, that functioned as a way to maintain mental hygiene.
Yes.
So the Black cultural arts movement, for instance, and reclaiming drumming and that kind of thing, I hear you describing as central to us regaining our stability as a people and as individuals. And so you've then veered off to study a lot about the arts as therapy.
Yes.
And you were just talking about being at a qualitative conference. Again, you described that there are two kinds of research. There's quantitative research, which is all about crunching numbers, and we need that, and that's important. I've certainly learned in my work in educational reform that we've got to understand data, let the data speak, follow the data.
Yes.
But then there's also the qualitative piece, which you've done a lot of work on. So take us to that conference now.
Well, I attended one arts-based research panel, and people are doing really good work with the arts. One woman was talking about working with domestic abuse survivors and doing scrapbooking with them and doing digital scrapbooking, and and so new and innovative ways of providing arts to people who have been traumatized. But in my panel, it was called Musicality 2, and one of the first presenters presented house music, a video of house music, and working with African American youth in Chicago. I could doubt whether this brings the cortisol levels down because
right.
it's so
it gets you spiked up.
yes,
yeah.
so lively and intense. But there's different ways of working it.
That's
But my particular piece was about the group in Chicago that I had written this chapter about, the Chicago Sun Drummers. And I started off with 7 men in 1971 who were reclaiming the culture. And this was around the time after the African liberation movements, when African drummers like Babatunde Olatunji
Yes.
and Laji Camara from Guinea had come over in New York, and my godfather, he was drumming, and where we had always been taught, especially by this group of men that I'm talking about, the Chicago Sun Drummers, because I feel like I came out of that
Yes.
tradition. Women didn't play drums. That's why I got into making shaker-rays, because the women could craft and they could play that instrument, but they couldn't sit and play drums.
But they couldn't hold you back.
The thing is that when my godfather, who died maybe 6-7 years ago at the age of 90-something, told me that he was taught to drum in South Carolina by a woman.
Okay.
In the in the 1930s.
Now, in South Carolina, speaking of culture, a lot of our Africanisms and culture has been able to be maintained in South Carolina, and the sort of anthropologists tell us, just like in the West Indies, when we're in more concentrated numbers, we're
Yes.
able to hold on to more of what we have. So South Carolina is known as a cultural basin for Africanisms and African American culture. So that's lovely that that's where he got that.
Yes, and it's good that when I was doing that piece for the fellowship, I was talking about the fact that we, especially as African American women, art has always been functional in the African aesthetic. It's functional. It serves a purpose. And so we learned how to make dishes, and we did quilting, and we did things that were functional. But we're just now reclaiming these gore cultures. So I'm thankful to this group of men led by I2 Harold Murray for turning us back on to the gourd and the gourd crafts, because that centered my life. But as I was recounting the tradition and speaking of these men as revolutionaries, because during the Black Power movement, we had the cultural nationalists and we had the revolutionary nationalists. And what I argue is that they were revolutionary Pan-Africanists, that the drum strike that they struck was just as powerful as a bullet. Because while the Black Panther Party, and we were just talking about that, from the external
over the break,
COINTELPRO and the internal divisions, went by the wayside. What these men did, and those cultural artists, we're still dealing with that. And when I sang some of their songs to this group and played the drum in there, I looked up and there was a woman on the front row crying. And it turned out these were a group of art therapists.
And you didn't even know it. You were just touching them to the bone.
And that's what I had to say, is that 40 plus years after these men did what they did, the simple songs, because it was in the Black vernacular. We be African people. A body without a head ain't no good. He used these simple songs to move the hearts and the minds of the people in that time. And what came out of it is Muntu Dance Theater that's still going strong today. So we, and those things, they gave people in the community hope, but it also gave women who wanted to dance a space to do that. We memorialized one of the sisters that was in the early Muntu Dance Theater on Friday when I was in Chicago. She had transitioned. She was my age, but the drum and the dance was there. The children that had come up in the culture, all of these women who had come through that way, made their living. If it hadn't been for that moment in history, where would they be? Where would my children be? Because this was the cultural community that nurtured me and my children when we were coming through there. So, that was such a powerful thing, not just to be moving these people at that moment and during the conference, but to reflect on just how powerful that moment is, and then to the next week after that, to have her transition and to go in among the community and to kind of lock arms and send our sister home. It was even a more powerful testament to that, to just what came out of that era.
So what are the art therapists saying? Maybe you can tell us if any of them told their stories of, what drove them to even want to be an art therapist. Actually, and how do they describe it in liberatory terms?
Actually, they didn't. But what they did do was try to recruit me for their program. It's like, we know you have your discipline, but, you're doing this. They were from Drexel University. And the woman who was crying was their professor. So I get an email the next day saying, we were just so moved by your performance. Do you want to come up here for a visit? So, just that whole idea that I moved them so much with that particular performance. But just in going back, just generally with arts as therapy, we have, everything is local. And so we have so much work to do here. I think it was last week that me and my daughters went and performed at Bethel Church for their graduation thing, and Dante, who was with
Dante Lodge.
Yes, he had invited us to come, and afterwards he said, I have these boys, and we would really like, to do some drumming with them.
He is so good with kids. Oh my God.
And so, we have so much that we could do here. When I did the Saturday school, I intentionally included the arts because our children need that. I mean, some of these schools, and the surveys that I got from the kids, and how often do you have arts in the schools? Now, Urbana does a little bit better with it, but once a week. And then we have situations where the arts are being denied for children in these large urban settings because of the tests, focusing on that. So, the very thing that could help them to feel a part of the school environment and to thrive personally is being taken away from them. But, the creatives in Microsoft or Google or places like that, so our children are being denied that from the jump.
Not just expression, but options for livelihood.
Right.
Yes.
And one of the articles that I came across when I was doing the research for Ruby came from the National Endowment for the Arts. It was a commission piece, but it talked about how arts make us more human. But it also, in the 21st century, can lead to jobs and professions.
Let's get real.
And so,
especially for a community that is so and underemployed. I love, when I'm going to have someone do the show, I often ask them to give me some homework in preparation. And Dr. Davis sent me some of the work she had done on Dr. Ruby Mendenhall's behalf, this program she's talking about with the women in Chicago. And it struck me when I was reading it, you were talking about these women's art collectives, and they're creating art and how important it was and how women have our own ways of communicating and supporting each other. But the thing that cracked me up was they were about the business. At the same time, this was an economic venture. They saw these and see these as economic collectives, not just, ooh, let's make art together.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the women's cooperatives that were part of the literature, they were formed so that the women could maintain tradition.
Yes.
And that's what I was saying, that as African American women, we have quilting, but and pottery.
Yes.
But we have few cultural traditions to pass on to our children that they're still interested in doing. However, when we were in these conference calls with Ruby's project, one of the women in Chicago who's working with Family Focus and African American teens, and she said, well, we did a quilting project and they just loved it. So we can reclaim these for our children and bringing mothers and daughters together. And we can do a quilting project here because not only does it it's a handicraft that allows for creative expression, it's communality. That we are coming together, we're ending that social isolation, because many of us, and that's neoliberalism, it's focusing on the individual.
Yeah, so y'all remember, neo means new. So she's describing in neoliberalism, saying that is new and different from our tradition, which is a collectivist tradition, that what doesn't work for us is this individualistic approach to things, and it's in fact what's killing us.
It is. It is. So we need to figure out these ways to use the art to come back together. And so these women are art co-ops. They do that, but they also allow these women to create things, material culture that they can then sell. When I was in London the last time, there was a woman from the Cameroon who had started a little cooperative with women. They started micro-lending, and the women were making little shoes, they were making batiks, they were making little dolls and things, and she was over in London selling them, and she would take that money back to them so that they could reinvest.
So let's back up a minute and make sure people know what you mean by microfinancing. You want to say a little bit about that?
I can't even do my own finances, so I can't talk about microfinances or mega financing.
Just generally speaking, what she's referring to is, which got its traction with the Grameen Bank out of India, when you're looking at deep poverty around the world. One of the things we've come to know is how well women are doing, how well women and children are doing, is usually a sign for how well a people are doing.
Right.
So they started the Grameen Bank and gave women just small loans, right? That's what we call it, micro lending,
Right.
just small loans. Again, doing the very things you're talking about, doing some kind of crafts, making things, it just took off. So we see this happening all over the world now, and I'd like to get a hold of places where it's happening right here in the United States amongst people. You know, we used to call ourselves third world people. We don't hear that very much now, but there are pockets of quote unquote third world people right here in this country. And one of the things they found is a very tiny rate of default on the loans.
Right.
So you could do so much with so little money and raise these women and children and then the families out of poverty. So again, this cultural and economic connection is really critical.
But we used to have mutual aid societies.
Absolutely.
I mean, so this is not a new concept.
Yes, bartering, lending, sharing.
I was reading Bessie Head's When Storm Clouds Gather, I believe was the name of the book. But she was also talking about this whole notion of mutual aid societies. And, you know, now it's being called micro-lending.
Yeah.
But, I mean, and so this is transcultural.
Yes.
That people have done that. I know that it was written about in the Dead Cell Memories about the cabildos and the collectives around African diasporic religions in Cuba and Puerto Rico and places like that. I mean, still doing the mutual aid where they could save money collectively to buy little things, household goods, or even to bury their dead. So.
Absolutely. And that's a powerful cultural tradition that some of us still rely upon. I'm thinking about that's the only way we're going to really be able to do this gap year for Amina is through some mutual aid. Who's willing to chip in to help make this happen? So that feels real good when we reclaim what's already ours. So on that note, we're going to take another quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
The Access Initiative mission is to build a trauma and justice-informed system of care designed to create a healed community that works to ensure that youth and their families are resilient, resourceful, responsible, and restored.
And we're back. This is Access Live, a community education and engagement arm of the Access Initiative. I'm your host, Imani Bazzell, and we have in the studio with us this afternoon Dr. Amira Davis, who did her doctoral work in educational policy studies, and we certainly also know her as a community cultural arts worker. She's been so for over 30 years. That's 3 decades in Chicago, and now here for the past 17 years. And we're talking about art as therapy. We're talking about the role that art has played in the lives of Africans and us as a part of the diaspora that is the foundation of our being. We've talked about how you can keep people down, you can keep people oppressed by separating them from their base, from their culture. And Dr. Davis even talked about the word primal or primitive, which causes some of us who suffer more deeply from internalized oppression to want to separate ourselves from Africa because it's associated with being primitive. But really the root of primitive, as you said, was just think about it. It's the core, it's the foundation, it's the root. And whenever we lose touch with that, we're in trouble. So much of this work amongst African Americans in terms of our mental health and healing and the arts is about reclaiming our stability, reclaiming our roots. So nobody's saying everybody's got to go back and act in what people might think of as primitive ways. because we have modern manifestations of what that looks like. You can be a cultural warrior, you can be grounded in your people's culture and be a modern person. We see that on the continent itself. And Dr. Davis has talked about what that looks like in modern culture now. But that we will be broken, we'll continue to suffer from our internalized oppression until we get some grounding, until we get some balance. And so we're talking about today, and in our next 2 episodes of the show, we're going to be talking about the arts and how it functions for our own mental hygiene, for mental health and healing, for people who have very diagnosable mental health issues. Even in mental health institutions, they use art as therapy. But also for those of us who are out here semi-functioning, right? It's important to help us maintain our balance and stability. And so you talked about being at a conference recently and people's reaction to your storytelling and your singing. I know you also were at a conference in Chicago recently called Freedom Dreams, Freedom Now. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then, of course, we got to make sure you have time to talk about Community Saturday School.
Well, Freedom Dreams is based off of Robin D.G. Kelly's book. And, you know, just a radical reimagining of possibilities. And that's what went on. It was a very dynamic conference. I attended a panel where they talked about a liberatory education and what that looked like. And I mean, and that was the impetus for the Saturday school that I did. But there was a panel on art and, you know, using art for protest, which is therapeutic. And I have to say that there was a group of young artists out of Detroit who were using rap. And when you say that, you know, we don't have to go back to the roots of our culture. We don't have to drum, and we don't have to play the traditional African instruments. You know, we call what we do now neoclassical.
Yeah.
Is that
new again.
Yes, that we, you know, in all our dance forms, you can see the roots of African dance.
Yes.
In hip hop, you have to talk about, if you think about you know, where it comes from, you think about the jelly, the storyteller in the Gambia or in Manding culture, who came out, he told the history of the community in rap.
Now, may I say for a moment, I had the distinct pleasure of going to the Gambia and spending a summer there when I was 19, and a griot, who you're describing, a community storyteller.
Griot is French, jelly
yes,
is... Okay.
Jelly, yes. People here know the term griot, so thank you for helping us make that connection. Would come to our compound where we were staying maybe once a week, and they would just show up and start singing and telling the stories. And that's what... Because before you have a written culture, you have an oral tradition. Right. And they maintain the story of the people, again, through song. Yes.
And just word storytelling, prose. So we had at Freedom Dreams, we had some young brothers from Detroit come down, and, you know, they were delivering the message. They also had Kevin Koval, who... a young Jewish man who, you know, decided he wanted to be a rapper and hung out with the brothers. And he delivered his piece, which was very powerful. And so, you know, what are young brothers on the streets who are doing this? I mean, they've been co-opted by this corporate kind of rap, gangster rap, and it's been corrupted. Yes. But, you know, we could still use hip hop and rap as a curriculum piece to, one, encourage our young children to develop their oral ability, their speaking ability, their writing, creative writing, and to critically look at the world around them and to say these things.
I think I had the weirdest dream last night. I think I was processing how we would go through the show today. I had a dream that something happened. I'm not sure what happened to me, but I ended up with a brain injury. Like it was some serious accident. And as I was regaining my ability to speak, I was only speaking in rhyme. And it was like, and you know, dreams can, you know, go through time and things happen very fast in a small amount of time. But so they were trying to decide whether I needed to be put in a mental health institution because something was just wrong with me, or maybe I was trying to say something and somehow it ended up that I was composing lyrics. I was writing songs, and that was how I got back my ability to speak. Isn't that bizarre?
That's
so I
powerful,
think I was processing what we would talk about today. And so dream life is important in what we're talking about too, isn't it?
All of that,
Yeah.
and being able to read and decipher,
Yeah.
you know, what the meaning of these dreams. There's an art to that.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I think that there's so much that we have abandoned for the sake of integration, and you know, wanting to assimilate into this culture, and in order to, you know, resist this cultural genocide that's
Yes.
taking place, we need to start reclaiming, rethinking this freedom dreams, this whole radical reimagining of, you know, taking the best of our culture,
Yes.
and, you know, recreating and moving that forward for the next generations. And, you know, because we see that where this whole corporatized world is taking us is down a path of destruction.
Honey, we are on a race to the bottom in no uncertain terms, aren't we?
Exactly. And so, you know, whatever we can do to get back to.
So right here at home, I know we want to get right back here in Champaign-Urbana. What does it mean to bring this stuff back home? Besides yourself, do you know, I know Morris Mosley, you know, has some history of doing art therapy with youth. And part of your vision for creating, you all know Dr. Davis is the founding director of Community Saturday School, which we talked about on the air before. You talked about the importance of weaving art into that. And that is something liberatory. When we're using this term liberatory, we're talking about liberation, right? What does it mean to liberate our minds, to liberate our bodies, to liberate our intellect, right? So say a little bit about what can these freedom dreams we have for ourselves and for our people, what can that look like right here at home?
Well, I think, one, there needs to be, we need to make more of a presence in traditional schools. One of the things that I came across, it was from the Pittsburgh School District, is that teachers started working with artists of the African diaspora to bring them into the schools to do arts programming with African American youth. And I know that there's not a lot of African American artists in this community, but they should make use of those who are here.
Yes.
You know, and I-57 Chicago 2-hour drive straight
far.
down. It's not that far. Bring them down here, and you know, and show them. Unfortunately, there's this idea, and I had this discussion with the director of the Center for World Music, that African Americans have no culture of our own. And so it's been very difficult for me to be in this community and work. 17 years is hard, and I will say this on air, I think I've come to the end. I think I have 2 more months left here.
Really?
I've got my boxes and I'm packing up. And I'm telling you this now.
She said it out loud, Joe.
Yeah, it's been hard. It's been hard for me as an artist to be able to do the kind of art that I want to do here. It's been hard for me as an arts educator to get work and maintain myself and my children. And Naila doing what she did early has liberated me.
Yes.
And so that's where I am right now, is that
And my heart is beating fast.
Yeah. So, but we in whatever community, those who know have to.
You must do.
Put out the effort to do, and you have to come from that space. I liked Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings' comment is that neoliberalism knows what it wants. It wants to create a workforce of cheap laborers. We have to know what we want to. We need to create radical, critical thinkers.
And radical, of course, means root. Once again, we're back to the root.
Right.
Yes.
And that's what the onus is on you and others in this community to do that work. And so there it is.
It is. So again, there's this quote that we often hear people recite, that we're the ones we've been waiting for. I think that's what I hear you saying. And I had this image come to my mind when you were saying, I've got goosebumps now, when you were saying, my boxes are getting packed. I think, this image of the prophet, right? The book, The Prophet. And that's what that was about, where he's saying, Al-Mustafa, the beloved, is saying, my ship's coming in. I've been waiting all of this time while I've been amongst you. Here's what I've tried to do. Here's what I've tried to teach. And so for those of you that don't know it, that's Khalil Gibran, right. A famous Lebanese poet. So you want to get The Prophet, one of my favorite all-time books. I give it as gifts all the time. Mm-hmm. And so it goes on where the people gather around him and say, and what of marriage, and what of children, and what of work, et cetera, et cetera. And we need to have that conversation. Mm-hmm. We need to have it with you before you leave. We need to have it amongst ourselves. We need to always be lifting people up who have the creative spirit, and artists deserve to be supported. Artists should never have to want for where they will live or when they will eat. That's what I believe, and I believe in our hearts that's what our community believes. So on that note, you all, this is part 1 of 3. We've been talking about the role of the cultural arts in the mental health and healing of the African American community. Make sure you're back with us next week when we'll have a theater production company here to visit that question further. I'm Imani Bazzell, your host for Access Live. We'll talk to you again next week. Hold hands until then.
Thank you for listening to Access Live. Access Initiative is a trauma and justice-informed system of care. We're glad that you joined us today. Please join us every Wednesday at 2:00 p.m. for Access Live. Thank you and be well.